And we're live. Good afternoon, everybody. If you've been here before, you know what to do. I'm just going to do a sound check. So if you can hear me, please type yes into your chat box, which is on the right-hand side. And it's the third tab down. Can everybody hear me? Hope you're having a good Thursday. It's quite dreary here in Hampshire. Very cold, very cold. Where's the summer gone? I'll bring it back quickly. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Presenters, you can hear me?
I can, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. There we go. There's all the yeses coming in. Thank you very much. Perfect, so it looks like everybody can hear me, so let's get going. So thank you for taking the time to join our webinar today looking at mental health and wellbeing in the workplace. This is our second webinar in this series. This webinar is brought to you by the UK Contact Centre Forum. My name is Chantal Newton and I'm the Marketing Manager. I've just got a few housekeeping points to go through before we begin. Our webinar sessions are fully interactive and we have some polls for you to participate in today. So when prompted, the poll should appear automatically in the side panel on your right. If the poll does not automatically appear, there is a polls tab that you can select and there'll be an orange dot when there's a poll live for you to participate in. After the presentation today, we'll be holding a full Q&A session. Please post any questions that you may have in the chat box and we'll put them to our panelists at the end of the session. The webinar is expected to last an hour. If you're unable to stay for the whole session, the webinar is being recorded and the link will be emailed to all participants within 24 hours of the webinar ending. So I'm joined today by Gavin Morden, Head of Customer Service and Investment Dealing at the Share Centre. Gavin is going to be leading our presentation today. We've also got Justin Stone. Justin was actually the presenter on our first webinar a couple of weeks ago. Justin's the People Service and Operations Manager at GFM Limited, and he's returned to take part in our Q&A session at the end. But before we begin, I'm going to pass you over to our very own Trevor Butterworth. He's our founder and CEO. So Trevor, over to you.
Thank you, Chantal. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our second Mental Health and Wellbeing in the Workplace webinar. As Chantal said, we're joined today by Gavin Morden, who is Head of Contact Centre Investments at the Share Centre in Aylesbury. We also have Justin Stone joining us with Gavin at the end to answer any questions you may have relating to your company's mental health and wellbeing strategy you have in place or are in the process of implementing. Now, I would like to introduce you to Gavin Morden, who will now talk you through his company's mental health and wellbeing strategy. Over to you, Gavin.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Chantal. I hope everyone can hear me. I assume yes, unless I hear otherwise. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk today. Hope everyone is well. I'd like to share some thoughts on a subject which is really quite close to my own heart. So as Trevor said, I'm Head of Customer Service and Investment Dealing at the Share Centre. I joined the inaugural session that Justin ran in November, and I found the session incredibly insightful and really very useful. And I hope to talk to a couple of his points today as well. As we said, Justin is going to join the discussion a bit later as well. And through the session today, I'll run a couple of polls to get your feedback. So I really do invite you to give your feedback and get involved. It'd be great to see some responses and hopefully be very useful. So as I say, I'm Head of Customer Service and Investment Dealing at the Share Centre. I've been here about 2.5 years, and it's my first role in financial services. Previously, I've worked in and around the customer service and support industry probably for the last 20 odd years in a number of different areas. I've worked in retail, but predominantly around in the utilities and energy space and telecoms. And during that time, I've been incredibly fortunate enough to run a number of different teams. Wherever I've been, I've tried to adopt a people-first culture wherever I can, ensuring that not only do you work hard to get the right people into the business and work very well with them, but bringing people with a shared set of values and a shared moral compass, if you like. But it's also important to support these individuals wherever possible and to get to know them personally as individuals. For me, I've always found that knowing your people and being aware of the challenges that goes beyond just understanding what they do today on a day-to-day task level. For me, it's imperative that as leaders of people, we don't just continue to develop our own IQ levels, we also develop our EQ levels, so we can become better attuned to what our teams might be going through and be aware of what might be impacting their mental health and personal well-being. To paraphrase slightly from Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, we're in the people business. So we need to know our people. It's our responsibility as leaders to look after our people, and we need to keep the part on our agenda. But it's equally important that we don't lose sight of the need to look after ourselves too. So for the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you some of the pieces and things we've changed at the Share Centre to implement some strategies there, but also share some of the lessons I've learned along the way. Okay, so the agenda for today, I'm going to give you a bit of background on the Share Centre. I'm going to then talk a bit about what we've done with regards to mental health and wellbeing. I'm then going to take a step back and talk a bit about what happened before the pandemic and what we did to check the pulse of the business. I'm going to share some of the actions we then took, and then I'm going to move on to talk about what happened with social distancing in the lockdown, when we went out in lockdown 1, and then what happened when we started to bring people back in post-lockdown 1, and the lessons learned around that. So the Share Centre, who are we? Well, we were founded in 1990. We're an multi-award-winning financial services business offering online and offline stockbroker services. Our motto is simply easier. Our aim is to ensure that we have more people enjoying straightforward investing. We've got about 250 staff at the moment, and we've got very much a strong values-driven culture. We're based out of a single site in Aylesbury. We don't outsource, it's all in-house. And the last point that's important is that at the moment we're currently being merged with another company called Interactive Investor. So we'll come back to that in a second. But I wanted just to start essentially by sharing why this subject is so important to me. Well, good mental health and well-being is essential. And it's often the case that we don't appreciate it till it's gone, or how much we take it for granted, until life events, whatever the size, take a turn and impact it. Potentially 1 in 4 of us at any time could be struggling with mental health issues at a variety of levels. And as such, it's more important than ever to recognise the challenges that individuals are going through. The good news, and I certainly feel this, is that the willingness and openness to talk and discuss these issues is becoming more prevalent. It's no longer such a taboo. And debate like the Time to Talk campaign has really brought this to the fore. And the more we talk about it, the more we discuss the things, the more opportunities to develop solutions and put plans in place to address. So I'm going to share a bit of a case study around this with what's happened at the Share Centre in the last 18 months, pre and post-COVID, to support mental health and wellbeing, and outline why it's been important in 2020, but equally just as important going into 2021. And I mentioned in the last slide around the context within the Share Centre. So alongside the backdrop of the pandemic, we've also had the backdrop of a big change within the business. We're bringing 2 businesses together. And helping our teams that change curve as another big life event is something that we as leaders need to make sure we focus upon. It's that effect that we need to make sure is mitigated against and given that support wherever possible. So within our business, we're really focused on looking after our people, and it's one of our key objectives and a key pillar we're working towards. But before I talk a bit more about that, I'm going to take a step back a couple of years, if you don't mind, and think back before the pandemic. Now, I know this feels like a long time ago. It was only the start of this year, but it's a lot's happened, a lot of water's gone on the bridge since then. So I'm going to take you back to a couple of years, as I say, and I'm going to tell you a story. And like a lot of good stories, it starts with making a wish. So back in 2018, when pandemic was a word that wasn't so frequently used in the UK, the Share Centre launched its Make a Wish campaign. Now, this campaign encouraged customers to invest with the Share Centre and help them prepare for their own futures and make their own wishes come true. It was predominantly a marketing-driven campaign, so it was external focused. However, it was also internally focused too. And with that in mind, the CEO and the exec team wanted to know how the business was feeling and what else they, and indeed all of us, could do to improve things for everyone. So the CEO personally invited everyone in the business to make a wish, and then we reviewed the responses. Now, as you'd expect, there was a bit of a mix of responses, some more light-hearted. And one of the more light-hearted ones was, the wish was, I'd like a year's worth of ice cream. Now, our CEO responded by saying he couldn't provide a year's worth of ice cream, but he could certainly provide a day's worth. And very shortly, an ice cream van arrived on site, and everyone got ice cream for the day. Now, I'd only recently joined the business at this time, but it was a fantastic thing for me because I thought it was an amazing surprise and delight activity that had been introduced and really brought to light the culture of the company that I just joined. And I love this example. The Share Centre has always been a very positive place to work. It's been a very family-based company. The founder has been the chairman, and the values of the business haven't changed for the last 15 years. It's very family-focused. There's a popular recommend a friend scheme, online subsidised gym. There's a good work-life balance as well, with the tendency is to do the standard hours rather than doing lots and lots of extended hours. But people work very well together, and there's flexibility around the core hours as well. There's also a very strong altruistic approach from the Share Centre. So there's a Shares for School campaign that's run as well. We have dedicated charities we support every single year. And for me, there was a strong foundation on which to build. However, it was really pleasing that although all this good stuff was being done, the business wanted to do more to improve things for its employees and their health and well-being. And as a result of this Make-A-Wish campaign, the business decided to start to investigate what else it could do to develop a more joined-up employee engagement and well-being campaign as well. And the next step it took was a full staff engagement pulse survey to gauge the pulse of the company and how we're feeling. I'll come more onto that in a second. But I'd like to just refer back to something that Justin said in the last session too. One of the key points that he picked up on was it's important and essential to have the senior stakeholders buy in and be able to champion initiatives that are put in place. By having that buy-in at a senior level, it was really apparent that whatever feedback we would come back with around our health and well-being would be taken on board, and hopefully the traction would be taken with the exec team to move forward. Okay, so the 2018 Pulse survey asked a whole raft of questions around office environment, remuneration, strategy, how we felt about our future, and personal well-being and development needs. And as a result, one of the areas that became a key focus was on how we might develop an improved one-team culture. And I was lucky enough to join one of the working groups established to consider a number of questions. The things we looked at were how might we work more collaboratively? How might we improve the existing buddy scheme as well? So already running within the business and have been for some time, there was a buddy scheme whereby new starters were buddied up with someone else, an existing member of the team, to give them that support one-to-one. And it was working, but could have been improved. We wanted to also consider how we might enhance the culture of communication, plus how we might provide additional leadership opportunities and development within the business, as well as engagement. How can we better support social activities and charity work? And how might we further develop the sense of a cross-functional community in the business and provide further support to one another? Essentially, the overarching aim was to drive and improve ways of working, greater engagement, a sense of community, and overall well-being in the business. So after much planning and work, the result of the One Team working group was an initiative, our employee engagement initiative called TSC Tribes, which was launched in summer 2019. So what is Tribes? Well, the easiest way to describe it is almost like school houses. If you think Hogwarts, and what we did here was we essentially assigned everyone in the business to one of 4 tribes: bulls, bears, doves, and hawks. And each tribe, as you can see there, had its own livery and logo and lanyards to be worn to denote which tribe you were in. And whilst it was 4 tribes, it was a joined up initiative altogether. And we thought it was really important that we took an inclusive approach where everyone was opted into it as opposed to being able to opt out of it, so they felt part of something. And from day one, the Tribes Initiative had a number of benefits. So it became a bit of a USP, a bit of a unique selling point at interview that could be discussed with new starters. And when you started to join the business, they could be welcomed to a tribe as part of the onboarding process by their tribe members. And they started to really buy into that. It also acted as a way of driving conversations and networking at sort of the water cooler conversations, the coffee machine conversations, where people perhaps across the business hadn't talked to each other before. Although we've got 250 in the company, some people's paths may not have just simply crossed. So by having the same lanyards on, conversations could be had, which was, oh, you're in the same tribe as me. Oh, right, and get to know each other. So started to build a network across the business and improved kind of working relationships between people and sharing of improvement ideas. It also drove us to become a bit more human by having those face-to-face interactions. So we encouraged the team to start to use email less and start to have more conversations. Additionally, to support the 4 tribes, we also put in place what was essentially an exec committee of tribal leaders to run each of their tribes and act as a committee to coordinate the initiative overall. Now, the tribal leader candidates had to volunteer themselves and be voted in. And it didn't matter your role or seniority you held in the company, you could put your name forward. And as a result, we had tribal leaders from all around the business, from all grades, who could have an equal say in how the program ran, and in some cases gave them the first taste of leadership within the business through this activity. There was good diversity of people involved as well, and it was more reflective of the general needs of the business as a whole. And each tribe was then tasked with running a quarterly social event. So it gave the team an opportunity to be altruistic, work towards some charity work as well, and drive a bit of focus in that direction too. I feel like you're contributing to something larger than yourself. The CEO was also able to use this initiative and this structure to set tasks and ask questions of the tribes to get more information around how things were working and improve the way we were operating. And this informal structure enabled us to cut through some of the red tape within the business to get those answers. And equally, the people within the tribes could use that same approach to raise their questions and back up to the exec team through a less formal structure. Maybe they were a bit more comfortable doing so than in some line management structure potentially. So it's a good way of increasing communications. But I also think it's quite one of the key things that came out for me was this piece around leadership and development of individuals as part of their own well-being. And one of my team called Charlie, I suggested that she put herself forward to be a tribal leader, and she did, and she was voted in. And off the back of it, she and 2 other tribal leaders, one from the IT team and one from the business services team, the project management team, worked very closely together. And off the back of it, Charlie said to me, she's created 2 friends for life. It shows that networking and building that community spirit can really be created across the business. And rather than being divisive, as some would have feared with having 4 tribes within the business, it actually created healthy competitions and a sense of belonging, with employees sporting their lanyards with pride and happily sharing this concept when visitors came to the building and asked them about the concept. And off the back of it, we saw improvements in employee engagement scores thereafter. So in summary, for me, tribes really engendered a sense of belonging across the business and a sense of community, not just within your own tribe, but as part of something bigger. Within TSC, in the Share Centre, we essentially became one team, one tribe. The tribe structure as well, in addition to these tangible benefits, also provided a framework for a wider health and wellbeing activities in the business too, which I'm going to talk to you a bit more now. So in addition to tribes, it was recognised that we needed to introduce a joined-up programme within the Share Centre to formally support the health and wellbeing of our people. And this was championed centrally through our head of people and HR. And the starting point, and it kind of alludes back to what Justin was saying back in November, was to recruit some mental health champions in the business. Now, these mental health champions or first aiders were recruited from the employee population. And pre-COVID, we asked for volunteers to put themselves forward. And of the group of 250 people in the business, we received 70 requests, which is a fantastic, overwhelming response. And 12 were appointed from all different backgrounds across the business and received mental health first aider training from St John's Ambulance via Zoom. They were really instructed on how you can be the difference between a life lost and a life saved, and were trained on it, recognising the difference between particular conditions, be it anxiety and depression, schizophrenia, and possible suicide risk as well. And the detailed 2-day training on these conditions focused on the difference between just sympathy, saying things like, I'm sorry to hear it, and moving towards empathy and being able to ask the question, how are you feeling? How can I help? And taking the ownership piece there as well. And that was really key. But the business also recognised that we needed to do more. And it wasn't just the group of 12 mental health first aiders which would make a difference. We really needed to embed the culture of health and wellbeing more deeply into our wider culture at the Share Centre. So the next step was to expand the programme more widely, starting with mental health awareness training for managers. So we engaged a qualified occupational health trainer who commenced a training programme for all managers across the business. Again, focused on identifying mental health issues and improving the understanding and support that could be given, particularly focusing on strong listening skills and watching out for red flags. That was very important. And then we also started to tie this work in with the Mental Health Awareness Week as the wider initiative in the UK. And this was undertaken during May, so during COVID. And as we were working remotely at this point, we had to work things slightly differently. And we introduced a slightly different variant of tribes, the tribes engagement, called Connections, which is far more move the engagement online, onto the online space. If you can imagine kind of virtual sort of get-togethers, virtual coffee mornings and support sessions for the teams, check-in groups, if you like. We also made sure there was briefings every day. During that week, we encouraged engagement, talked about launched articles relating to nutrition and mental health, the importance of that alignment, the use of positive affirmations, being grateful, sharing everyone's favourite ways to relax, promoting mindfulness, and also promoting the support groups available, be they Minds and Samaritans and others, to make sure that people had that support functions, that they have the support structure they needed externally should they need to. And they also enhanced the employee engagement programme too, with some additional counselling sessions as part of that. And on the next couple of slides here, I just want to show you a couple of things that were produced. So you can see here, very much focused around kindness, always being kind to yourself, but being kind to others. And it's a bit small on the screen, so apologies, but there's details here around the types of things that you could do to be kind to one another. But it was that focus, bringing it to people's mind's eye that we needed to focus on this particularly important subject. And similarly here, not just about looking after others, but looking after yourself, being kind to yourself. What could you do during that week to try to create some habits that then you could start to continue with in your ongoing day-to-day lives to be better to yourself and kind to yourself. So much of this, the essence of what we produced during that weekend subsequently, has been about being kind to one another, but also showing examples how you can be kind to yourself too. Now, as these tips became increasingly essential, we started to feel the challenge of the pandemic. I'll take this opportunity before I move on to that section to run a quick poll question from me. So I'd like to get a feel for how much focus is currently being placed on mental health training within your businesses yourself, and particularly the managements. So can I pass across to you, Chantal, if that's okay, to do this poll, please?
Absolutely. So the poll is live now on your right-hand side under your polls tab. So the question is, how would you rate the level of mental health training and support for managers available in your business? So we've got excellent, good, adequate, poor, and needs immediate attention. These results that come in, we can't tell who's made what votes, or we see percentages, so it's completely anonymous, just to let anybody know. I love watching these blue lines jump up and down. Fantastic, thank you everybody. Moving around a little bit, I'll just wait for them to settle. Still moving. There we go. I think we're quite settled now. Oh no, we've jumped again. Okay, so I'm going to end that poll there. So the results are in, Gavin, and we've got 10% excellent, 35% good, 17% adequate, 35% poor, and thankfully no percent needs immediate attention.
Thank you, everyone. That's really good. There's work to be done by the sounds of it, that's for sure. But it's good to see that there's a good cohort who believe that have got some very strong support in place, which is good to hear too. Thank you, Chantal. Okay, so I'm going to move on now, if I may. So I'm going to take you back again, if I can, back to earlier this year, when we started social distancing back in February, and then talk a bit about what happened when lockdown kicked off. So within the share centre, the first thing we did when we knew we just needed to start social distancing, it was kind of all hands to the pump to start the planning measures behind it, and start to consider what would happen if we then needed to go to full lockdown. So pre-lockdown, we rented another part of our office, and we established what essentially was an arc, and undertook preparations to move a number of people from each team into this arc environment, so that should we lose part of the business through a COVID outbreak or lockdown, we could still maintain some running operation. Being regarded as a key worker status in financial services, we needed to keep a skeleton crew on board anyway. So that was important that not only do we have a location to support some people, but equally we needed to understand the background to individuals and their personal circumstances and family vulnerabilities, so we could identify who could stick around in the business as well. And we had to put out some questions around that. But I think the establishment of the ARC office was quite interesting to me, because it was a very stressful time, because suddenly you had a situation where people who might have worked together for weeks, months, years even, who are not just colleagues but friends, were being told that they would have to kind of break ties with each other and work independently. And people you'd see face to face on a daily basis, you wouldn't be able to do so anymore. It was a different environment we were moving into, and that created some anxiety for sure. But we also needed to make sure that should we move to lockdown, that we understood people's home setup and network, and did they have the technology in place to be able to support it. So not only did we buy a lot more laptops to support in the business, we made sure that people could remote desktop from home, and that was tested in anger to make sure they could do. And then what happened? Well, actually, in March 20, lockdown happened, lockdown 1, and pretty much overnight, everything changed immediately. So we had to work in a different way, and we put in place a cloud-based routing solution which enabled us to deliver calls to our teams working from home. And we switched to moving to Microsoft Teams as a channel of communication and contact. And as I've said before, we moved this connections team, remote teams, to give that support from home. And we made sure as well that we condensed our hours of operation so that we could start to give some more cover and support from a management perspective, or people working from home too. So what did we find when we moved to remote working? Well, for me, firstly, focusing on our people, knowing and supporting them, was more important than ever. I've put in here something which I've talked to a few people about over the last few months, but what I found quite quickly was that when you have people working from home, it was almost like having 50 mini outsourced partners, because each individual working from home had their own environmental, technical and personal challenges. And that contributed to a very stressful environment. What we need to remember is that on some days, things happen at home. So yes, the bin men will turn up. Next door neighbours could be having building work done. It happens. And that will preclude them from being able to do their work and not feeling comfortable in the environment they're working in. It's not an environment many people were used to working in. They were used to an office environment, and it was very strange and difficult for some to get used to. We also found, though, that comms actually increased and engagement across the team increased. We were so on one site and working together on one site. But the use of MS Teams started to create some very good engagement with people, and we switched very, very quickly to using this as to being a very strong tool for us. And whilst traditional sickness absences reduced because people were working from home, we also saw a drop in overall productivity as well. The good thing was, though, that customers were supportive of the situation. They understood that everyone was in the same boat, and that we're all trying to cope. And actually we're quite forgiving, and we were certainly appreciative of that. And I think it really helped support some of the guys working from home in this very difficult period. But the other thing that was really key that we picked up on was that increased recognition of the good work being done was essential. And not only do you need to get comms going, but recognising how difficult the situation was, and making sure you say thank, and thank again is really essential. And I want to give an example of that in a second. But the key thing for me as well was that when your team's remote work, it's essential to put yourself in their shoes. You need to consider what they're going through and ensure that empathy is top of the agenda, that you're really listening and understanding what they're saying to you, because it's a difficult situation they're in. And it's better to over communicate and simplify everything you do when your team are in that sort of position, remote working. Now, this particular piece I want to just point out because it was really welcome. So our CEO at the time, he hand wrote 250 cards, thank you cards, so everyone in the business received one in the post, to appreciate the hard work and effort that everyone's putting in and just recognise the difficult situation we're in. So the reason I'm flagging this is that although working in a virtual environment and working online with the use of Teams, the receipt of a hard copy postal card went down incredibly well, really well received. That personal touch really meant the world. In this world of being online, the personal things really do count. And recognising people as individuals was essential. And for me personally, it was a great pick-me-up when I was working from home. It really was. So, we put a massive thank you out to our CEO when we received that. So, other key lessons for me from lockdown. Well, really, instant messaging was not a distraction. It's now become a BAU tool. So MS Teams is now embedded into our culture and the way we operate. Ironically, we've now got an alternative disaster recovery plan. So whereas having a separate site as we had, should we need BCP to be enacted, by having this setup of being able to work from home has given us an alternative. But it's really important when people are remote working to recognise this, that to be careful of what you wish for, because working from home can be lonely. It can be isolating and can impact mental health. It can be stressful, and for some it's not what they're used to and not what they were expecting. There's a level of tedium that can set in potentially, because in an office environment there's maybe a lot more variety of stuff they can work on, but if you're working remotely, that might not be the case. So it's really important that you check in with individuals regularly. Just because they may not be vocal and seem okay doesn't mean they are. A quick message, a quick check-in may be all that's needed, but it's important to do it. But it's also important to have your finger on the pulse of your whole team. Listen to others, pick up on what they're saying. John may have been quiet this week. You might not have thought about it, but someone else might have picked up on it. So it's important to recognise that, listen out for it. And whilst working from home suits some, it doesn't suit all. And what was interesting is that when the opportunity came about to think about coming back to the office, many were keen to do so. Now, I'm going to talk a bit more about what happened next when people came back into the office. But before I do that, I'm going to pass back to Chantal, if I may, and just run another quick poll.
Thanks, Gavin. Let's just... Oh. There we go. I lost it then, I do apologise. So the next poll question is, how would you rate the actions you've put in place to support remote working? So your choices are thorough and detailed, good, just enough, not enough, or doesn't meet the team needs at all. Got people voting on that, thank you. It hasn't automatically appeared if you just click your polls tab like before, and hopefully that will show for you. Just wait for the action to settle down. Still moving around. Thank you, everybody. I think we've settled now, so I'm just going to end that there. So the results are 42% thorough and detailed, 42% good, 7% just enough, 7% not enough, and 0% doesn't meet the team needs at all.
Thanks again. That's good. Again, really positive by that. It sounds like we've really got a lot of us got our houses in order with regards to remote working. It's interesting because I've come across some feedback with customers are expecting that now, that we've had time since lockdown. Lockdown's been in place and remote working's been in place for some time now, so we should have got our houses in order to be able to do this support. So it's good to see that same sense of confidence in our remote working capabilities is being shared. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just step onto the final section around the easing of lockdown. So what happened in August when we started to enable people to come back to the office. So as I said, we gave the opportunity to return to the office. It was offered out, and some were very keen to absolutely return due to sort of feelings of isolation and a bit of tedium and the need to have human contact once again and be part of a group. It was really clear from some of the feedback we received that they'd missed the direct face-to-face interaction and just missed seeing their colleagues and friends. It's a friendly environment we work in, and we can't forget that social aspect is very important. So we offer some flexibility on return, and as it stands at the moment, we've got about 80% of the business of the customer service and dealing team back into the office at the moment. But to do that, we had to make sure that we were set up to do so, as most offices do. So we undertook a desk reorganisation, spread ourselves out more widely, made sure there was social distancing in place as well, put screens up, had designated entry and exit doors, revised the room layouts and limited numbers in rooms, had new breakout areas, included sanitizer, and also introduced a 2-hour cleaning rota in the office, which has been really important. It's keeping us safe, which is a key thing. And I know some businesses have actually produced sort of virtual walkthroughs and fly-throughs, if you like, to demonstrate what's been done, because the whole thing was around making sure that people felt comfortable to return and safe to return. And you had to demonstrate that we were doing all that we could do to do so, because having their safety and their health and well-being as paramount, and that we were making sure we had provisions to do so, was absolutely essential. So since returning to the office, it's been really key that we haven't forgotten that some people are still remote working. We needed to make sure that we kept the virtual comms going, as not everyone had returned. The worst thing we could do was to stop being inclusive, but we need to recognise that people were still having to remote work in some cases. So we didn't create an even greater sense of isolation. We wanted to make sure that we stopped any sort of feelings of boredom or potential tedium of repetitive tasks. So we started doing a lot more cross-skilling when people were back in the office to try and freshen things up and keep it interesting, which obviously came with its own challenges, because side-by-side training, as you can imagine, is quite difficult in that sort of business. But we found ways around it with a greater use of virtual tools. We also made sure we did almost like a mini version of Tribes in the contact and dealing teams, where we set up these teams called crews. So the detail behind it is essentially they are small teams where they create more engagement, and we had a crews day to try and increase team engagement and morale. It was all about keeping the morale up when people returned to the office. We promoted the employee engagement program and also made sure that we had very clear new policies and processes in place around COVID, and we're adhering to them, and everyone was trained on it. So all managers were fully aware of what needed to do should an outbreak or should an instance of an outbreak happen. It was all about safety and security of those in the office again. Okay, so just to recap on what I've been through today then. So there's three main points I've covered off. So as part of the work we've done to drive mental health and wellbeing within the Share Centre, one, we introduced Tribes, an employee engagement program driving increased networking community. Two, I gave an overview of our centrally managed mental health and wellbeing program that focused on both the team and individual self-care. And three, we went through the challenges and actions that we took pre and post the pandemic during 2020 to look after our people. So I've got one final slide, and this is personally my lessons learned. So for me, this year has shown that change is the only constant, and some of us are more adept at change than others and coping with it. We are all social animals, and we need contact, so constant and consistent engagement and communication, and particularly over-communication, is essential. And it's vital that we know our people. The ones who are the least vocal may need just as much support as those who speak up. And this final point is everyone needs to take care of their own mental health and wellbeing first. It's important to fit your own mask first. Being selfish isn't a dirty word. You can't look after others if you can't look after yourself. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found these slides useful. hand back to Chantal, I think.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Gavin. That was a wonderful presentation. And it's good to get an insight into how businesses are implementing mental health strategies. So if you do have any questions for both Gavin and Justin will be joining us for our Q&A session. Please post them into the chat box. I've just noticed a couple of people lost audio slightly there to the end. I'm hoping that issue's been resolved. If you have lost audio, if you could just refresh your browser, that should resolve that issue for you there. So onto the questions. Let's have a look. Lots to go through. So first question, Gavin, did you see that the EAP was more widely used as a result of your changes?
Yes, I think the answer. I haven't got the figures to hand, but it was very much more widely promoted. We have a program which has always been very strong in the business, and I can certainly come back with some more details around it.
Perfect, thank you. There will be some contact details at the end of the session, so if you do have any questions after the session, you can contact Gavin directly. So the next question, here we go. What was the most important thing you did to ensure engagement with those remote working?
I think for me, it was all about the communications element. As I said, I think we moved to using MS Teams, and it's very quick to fire off the messages, but it was also important just to have time to have a chat to individuals to make sure they were feeling okay, particularly when we first set them up, because there was for those working, there was a number of different technology issues we had to deal with, and that was very difficult. And I actually assigned one of my team in the operational excellence function to be the sort of the point person on a day-to-day basis, and she did a fantastic job for about 2 weeks, fielding questions and giving that support on a day-to-day basis to make sure they were being looked after. Because there's nothing worse, as we know, when we're sitting at home and we're struggling with a remote connection or a dodgy connection and the line's bad. If you've got a customer on the phone at the same time, as I said, they can be quite forgiving, but it can be very frustrating as well if it's a consistent problem. So making sure that engagement was there and support was there from technology's perspective was really important. But it was also about making people feel part of a community. So moving team huddles to being online as well, having that conversations and creating groups and teams groups which give answers that people could almost share it in a community way. So if one of the associates at home was unclear of a question, they put it on a Teams group, and chances are one of their colleagues would answer. It didn't necessarily have to be a leader or manager in the team that actually answer and give that support to each other. It was almost a bit like cloud surfing in some respects. It was very much in that way.
That's great, thank you. Do you still have some of your team remote working now, and how do they find with the others working in the office?
Yeah, we do. So we've got about 80% back in the office now within my team. So there's about 20% at home. It can be difficult. The contact piece is still really important. They do find it challenging, but they've gotten used to doing it in some respects. Almost the Teams bit has become the new BAU. So we've had to put in place a lot of changes to make sure that communication happens back and forward. But equally, we've also made to make sure that in some cases where you'd need printing out materials and fulfillment of materials within the office, you have almost a document support function who are providing that printing function for those at home, which is a bit resource heavy, but it means that there's support still operating remotely for those who are remote within the office, for those working remotely.
That's great, thank you. Did you have any sort of people that opposed the implementation? Mental health has always been sort of a taboo subject, hasn't it? So did you come up against people that sort of refused to take part, or has it been well received all rounded with your guys?
I think it's fair to say that it's been very well received.
Good.
We recognise that as a business that is very focused on our people, and as I said, very family focused. It happens to any one of us. So taking that time to learn a bit more, and very much just as Justin was saying back in November, investing in your people to give them those skills and abilities, and being able to see those red flags is only a benefit. So absolutely, I think as a business we've really embraced it.
It's fantastic, brilliant. It's a question that we actually covered with Justin in November. Did you have any sort of convincing to do with senior management because of cost, or was it quite straightforward? Were they on board straight away? Because obviously cost is always a big factor in business.
Of course, absolutely. I don't think it was an issue. I think the view here was that it's part of what we needed to do. And we need to recognise that it's a big part of making sure that people are okay and looked after. So I don't think it was an issue at all.
That's great. I'm just seeing if I don't think we've got any more questions from the audience. If you do have any questions, please type them into your chat box and I'll put them to our panel now. Justin, I just want to bring you in and see if you've got anything to add at all.
I just wanted to say I really love the presentation, actually, and especially around the tribe stuff you're doing and bringing it to life. And really wanted to say, I think what you've done is I think is a great blueprint for any other company. You've really thought about it, but you've clearly been thinking about your people before the pandemic as well. And I think that's the key thing, is that once we were out of the pandemic, we still need to carry on doing this. Wellbeing is just as important. I think, if you talk to Public Health England and listen to what they're saying, I think we're going to be dealing with this for at least another 12 months, as in the sense of how we're going to be feeling after this. So I think the stuff which has been discussed today is just perfect for an ongoing programme, really. So yeah, superb. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to pass you over to Trevor now, just for a quick few words from him, and then you're going to come back to me for the closing address. So Trevor, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Gavin, for your presentation today, and to you, Justin, for joining Gavin this afternoon. Just a couple of things. Firstly, our next mental health and wellbeing session is on the 14th of January 2021 at 12:30. We have Adam Taylor, Managing Director of Very Cool Solutions, who'll be sharing their experiences and their case study on what they're doing to support their staff on this important topic. However, our last webinar of 2020 is on the 8th of December at 12:30. And ironically enough, it's all around remote working, home working. So a big topic for us, as well as mental health. And we've been running a number of events this year on that. So it'd be great to get as many of you involved in that one on the 8th of December at 12:30. So before I hand back to Chantel to wrap up, I'd just like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. And
You've got there before me.
I'm in there first.
I'm Mrs. Christmas. He got there before me.
And I'd just like to say thank you all for your support for the user group in 2020. We've had an interesting and challenging year, but we seem to have come through it. But thank you for all your support, and look forward to putting on lots of events for you in 2021. Over to you, Chantel.
Thanks, Trevor. Yes, he got there before me. Not impressed with that, but there we go. Again, I'd just like to reiterate, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Thank you, Gavin. Your presentation was amazing. Thank you very much for the insight into how the Share Centre is tackling mental health. Justin, thank you again for joining us. I will make sure in the follow-up email I put a replay link in for today, because today's webinar has been recorded, and I'll also put the replay link in for Justin's session that we did in November, and all the links that Justin referenced in his presentation as well, because a lot of you found that very useful last time. So thank you very much. As Trevor said, we've got webinars coming up, one next week, one in January. You can find a full list of all our webinars on our website, www.uk-ccf.co.uk, and you can also find full information on membership of the user group as well. So I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas now. Again, it's my favourite time of the year, so I'm very excited I can say that to you now, and I hope you all stay well and all stay safe. Thank you again, and I look forward to welcoming you all again soon. Thank you, everybody.